rolling.
We're rolling.
Okay.
Hello, folks. You are watching the Dean and Dell Detailers Guild podcast, episode 2. I'm Dell.
I'm Dean, and we just wanted to kind of get into the Caribbean theme today. We're kind of limited as to where we can go, so we figured, we just open with something a little crazy. So,
Just a nice little Caribbean theme, if you will.
Yeah, and take the edge off a bit. Anyways, we're gonna get serious and
time to get serious for
get right into it. So, we'll
enough of this.
Yeah, enough of this stuff.
I'll put on some glasses I can see.
We'll keep the furniture though, because I like the new studio furniture.
Oh yeah, it's a nice decor here. I mean,
yeah.
Our first episode, it went without a hitch, but you know what? I think it's a little more festive today.
Yeah.
We got the cars here, we've got the TV, we've got our drinks.
Oh yeah. That's the thing I noticed. You know what? Right now, we're limited to what we can do, so we got to think outside the box, and we might as well have a little fun. So, I was going to start off by asking you a question today.
You got a question for me?
I have a question for you.
Oh boy, here we go.
When did you start music? Your turn to be in the hot seat.
Okay, so I guess it would really depend on what you define as. Now, if we're talking strictly DJing, when I went to university, I kind of got hooked into CJAM at the time, and it was a lot different than what it is now. Because at the time, we were still using 8 tracks for our commercials, which actually we did right up until a few years ago, really. But we didn't have podcast capabilities or the ability to record shows and that, so we've really come a long way. But when I was in school, I didn't have my own show at the time, but what I was doing was I was actually filling in for other DJs. So I kind of was a jack of all trades. And so I would just do various shows where the DJ would go on vacation or whatever the case was. I would come in and I'd do it. So I'd do a country music show one week, might be a heavy metal show the next week, talk radio the next week. So it just kind of went on from there. And that kind of morphed into a buddy of mine who went by the name Electrified Lightbright. He did a show, it was called, Thursday Night Jams. And he was doing a show on his own, and we would just kind of come in, like a bunch of buddies and that would just kind of come in and sit in on it. And eventually, the last year that he was there, I started co-hosting with him. And after that, he ended up moving to Toronto. So I basically took over the show, but then we kind of got booted out of our time slot. So that's when After Midnight Urban Beats was born, and that was back in 2000. I'm gonna say 4, around 2004.
Yeah, because the first time we got together at CJAM, it was all manual mixing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably in the museum now, right? And you're probably doing more of it on the computers.
I suppose if the museum is in the studio, then I suppose that's the case.
So they're still using. They're still using some of the.
A lot of the equipment has changed for the better.
Yeah.
Now I will say that we've made a lot of changes there, but what I will say is that when we use the 8 tracks, for instance, even though by today's standards you might say it's archaic technology, dated technology, but for commercials it was awesome because you'd have. Just say you'd have 4 different commercials, and for people who know how 8 tracks work, you just press the button, it goes to the next track.
Yeah. And
so you could just line it up. You didn't even really have to cue it up. You just put it in, the commercial would play, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it was a lot easier. Even though using the CD and even now doing it digitally, because most of our stuff's online now too, like we have it on the computer, so it makes it easier, but that old technology is still good. But I digress. Needless to say, to make a long story short, though it's too late, I went from that in 2004, and I was still DJ Dell at the time. 2006, my son was born, and I wanted to go into different things because I was doing interviews and stuff at the time. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to go into different music forms and you had to have a handle in order to do that. Well, I wanted to just put in DJ Dell. Well, I couldn't do that because apparently there was another DJ Dell already out there.
Okay.
So I had to think of, okay, well, I still want to use DJ Dell because that's people know me as that, but I got to add something to it so that I can get online.
Yeah.
And the 523 came from, at the time where I was living, my address was 523, and as it turned out, my son's birthday is May 23rd, which is also 523.
Yeah.
So I wanted to honor my son in doing that too, so then that's where the DJ Dell 523 came in, was the 523 was representing my son. So that's how that came about, and I did After Midnight Urban Beats till 2012. I gave that up because I was doing that show from midnight till 2 in the morning. It got to be a bit much after a while because I started working a day shift, so doing a show from midnight till 2 in the morning and then having to be up at 5 to leave for 6, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a grind.
Yeah.
So I was off air for about a year, and then I came back in and I started this show, which I'm doing now, which is the Urban Flow, and I've been doing that ever since. So,
yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring up music today in our podcast was because, like my whole life, most people, their life is intertwined with music and they don't even realize it. Like when I'm out here and I'm polishing, and I know I'm going to get ripped for this, but I listen to jazz or soft rock. I listen to stuff that's calming, so that while I'm polishing, you know, it calms my nerves, because it can be stressful because you're working on something and you're trying to get perfection, which is an illusion. You can't get perfection, but you're trying to do the best job that you can. And if you're not in the zone and focused, it's not going to happen. You know, and I always put on like calming music when I'm polishing. Now when I'm scrubbing the snot out of somebody's carpets or something like that, then I've got the Southern Rock going on, or I got something heavier, just to get through that part of it. Like I love cleaning cars, but the thing is, I find like I try and get through the interior, because the interior is the most aggressive part. You know, you're in there with a tornado gun, and you got dirt and sand flying up in your face, and you just want to get that part out of the way. Like you want to blow out all the dirt, you want to vacuum it, you want to get that out of the way. So I always have music, number one, to keep me awake, because I do suffer from insomnia. I don't get a lot of sleep, which is why I get so much stuff done, because I can't sleep. But anyway, I usually get that going. I get the interior out of the way, and then when I'm doing my finishing work, like the polishing, and I'm doing the conditioning, and I'm going through with my lights on, and I'm spot checking to make sure I got everything, that's when I like to put on the calming music, so I'm relaxed and I can actually focus on what I'm doing.
No, actually, in all honesty, it's kind of cliche to say, but it's the truth, and that is that music really is a soundtrack of your life. Yeah. And it's funny because, and I know we kind of discussed this off air, but any person out there, regardless of where you're from, and it's funny because it's really the one thing that really binds you, and it's the one thing that really binds people together, because if not anything else, music is always there. And it's the one thing that, okay, you can be in a place that has, like, obviously we're a first world country. Yeah. So obviously we have all the amenities here on hand. However, you go to other countries where they may not have electricity and that, well, they're not going to have a TV. But music is the one thing that regardless to your economic background, religious background, doesn't matter what your background is, music is always there. Yeah. And it's something that whether the music is coming from your voice or if it's coming from an instrument, you can produce it. And I mean, pretty much you can produce a melodic sound from pretty much any object. You know, and we've seen through the years where someone would take like a gourd and, a skin wrapped around it and make yourself a drum. Yeah. Or whatever the case is. And it's one of those things where it defines a moment. So you could hear a song today, like right now, we could be having a good time doing this podcast. A song comes on. Let's just say, Sweet Home Alabama. Yeah. Then years from now, Sweet Home Alabama could come on, and it could trigger the memory of us sitting here having this podcast.
And my whole life is tied to music. It's almost like when we're editing our video at the end, and we've got our audio track at the bottom, we got the video. It's the same. Life is the same way, it seems, because as soon as you hear that song on the radio, like for me, there's different songs that have triggered things. Whenever I hear Bob Seger, I think of my dad, because my dad went out and he bought the Live Bullet LP, and he had it cranked up in the house, and my brother and I thought, man, this is really cool. Like we really liked it, eh? And years later, like whenever I hear Bob Seger on the radio, I think of my dad. And there's all different music. Like I mean, my grandmother used to, my dad's mom, she loved Rod Stewart. So whenever I hear a Rod Stewart song come on the radio or something like that, right away I think of my grandmother. Right? But it's cool because you don't lose that memory. And I find today, like life is so busy for all of us that it's nice to just take some time out and relax. And right now with current events, a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands. And I find that music, they say music calms the savage beast, and it's true. I mean, if you want to just escape for a while, you put on some music, you know, and you listen to some stuff that brings back some good old memories. You know, it's very soothing, you know, and helps you get through the rest of your life. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the thing. We've all been like you and I are a lot older than some of the people that are out there. But
Okay, come on now.
but I mean, no, I mean,
No,
we've been through different scenarios. I mean,
Absolutely.
we went through the blackout, we went through 9/11, you know, and now currently we're dealing with this situation. But
I will say that I'm a little sad about the blackout though, because unfortunately I wasn't able to purchase one of those "I Survived the Blackout in 2003" shirts. But you know, like you said, it really comes down to the point that any music that you hear, it evokes a certain emotion.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you'll hear something and it might make you sad.
Yeah.
Because you remember somebody that's no longer around or something like that.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times it'll bring you, you know, happy thoughts or whatever, or make you mad. But you know, it's depending. But that's the thing. It'll bring back, like you say, with being a trigger. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That a lot of times you may try to recall something and you can't, and then as soon as that song comes on, there's something in your brain that just triggers. Oh, you know, I totally remember that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Eh? Like even, like, and I'm not trying to beat up any artists here, but even like the Beach Boys, are they my favorite band now? But do I like listening to them? Yeah. You know why? Because I used to hear it in the back when I'd sit in the back seat of my mom's car. She would always play the Beach Boys. She loved the Beach Boys. So whenever I hear that, I'm happy because I'm thinking back to when I was a kid and things were simple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it brings me right back to a simpler time when I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't have my own kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have all these things going on. And you know, I thought that it would be important we should cover music today because you know what? It does a lot of good. It's therapy in itself. And I thought, you know, if we got that out there today, I figured, you know, it might help a lot of people that are going through some tough times.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Now
see-
hold on a second. Hold it.
Okay.
Got to put the pause in there to be like the record skip. If we're gonna have the hand here, we might as well, you know, camera guy, you might as well show your face.
Yeah, come over here.
Come on over here. Let's see.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm barely
Let's see.
squeezed in here.
Look at that.
Anyways, this is my son Alec, and he does all our camera work for us. And, does our technical.
I have to stare at these fine gentlemen.
Lets us know when we're running
all
out
the
of time.
Fruit.
What I was gonna say is, I can't believe that you know, it's this small. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because the headphones that we have when we were kids, it had had a wire band on it, and the earpieces were the size of walnuts. Like it wasn't
Well, you
No, it
guys
wasn't
had
comfortable.
Walkman and
Wasn't small.
Discman and
Yeah.
stuff like
yeah,
that.
we had Walkman and then this.
What was that like? I skipped that
It was
generation.
actually pretty cool because we could, like I look what they have now. Like you could get 90 minutes of music on the tape, and it was kind of cool. You'd walk around with music.
Well, now the one thing with that, we do have to put a qualifier in there. Do not get those cat batteries, because if
Oh,
you get it,
yeah.
because I'll tell you, it's funny you
Yeah.
bring up the Discman, because I remember there was a time I was going over to the bulk barn over on Dougal. For those people who are local, you know where that is. For other people, it's just a street. But needless to say, I walked over there and I had my Discman, and I'm like, you know what? I found a CD that I like because they had a music store in there at the time, and I'm like, okay, my batteries are dead. Now they had a pack of 10 batteries for $2,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what a deal! Now, realistically,
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes a deal isn't a deal.
I was gonna say a red flag should have been up the moment I saw that they were $2. And mind you, this was mid-90s, but still
Yeah.
in all, okay. I will tell you that at the time I lived on the opposite side of town. I lived by Jefferson, so we'll say it was about 5 kilometers away. I hopped on
Yeah.
the bus. Now, if you were to guess, just take a wild guess, how many batteries do you think that I went through from Olette and Tecumseh to Jefferson and Tecumseh?
Probably about 8.
See,
Was I close?
you're pretty close. You never know what to expect. And then
Yeah.
you're going to even have things where, you know what, your son will just randomly come into a shop, and it's so
Yeah.
real. And this is the thing for you fans out there. I'll look at the camera. You will know that, hey, this is not some sort of corporate show
Yeah.
where, you know, everything's set up, because you know what? You're not going to have things said like, hey, edit this out. This is real. This is as
Yeah.
real. This is as real as it gets.
Okay.
And you know, the thing about it is that overall, we're just here to enjoy a cup of Joe,
Yeah.
you know, and talk
have a chat.
and you know, have a chat. And
Yeah.
what we want to do is we want to make it so that we enjoy doing this. And I mean, we've had many times where we've sat up, and whether we talked on the phone or if we talked over a coffee or whatever,
Or
and
even we've gone out and shot
Yeah.
pool and talked all night too.
and we've had enjoyable times.
Yeah.
And our whole thing is we just want to make it for you guys to be able to watch this, and hopefully you can just sit back and just, you know, maybe have a laugh,
Oh yeah.
you know, and kind of just enjoy it, you know. And
Well, I just want to mention we did pre-record this because with everything happening that's going on, it's getting a little more intense out there, and Dell and I will not be able to get together for a bit until things calm down. You know, we respect what's going on, and the thing is, now that we see it's intensifying and things are getting a little more serious, we decided we're going to do a couple of podcasts together, and then we can drop them out there once a week, and then you guys can enjoy it, and it'll give you something to do, you know, while you're off. And you know, basically once we get back, I mean, we'll be getting together once a week, like once everything is, you know, calmed down, you know, and like they said today on the radio and the TV and everything, the more effort we put in right now, the quicker we can all bring this thing to an end. So
absolutely.
I mean, we're both going to respect that, and we're going to do our part to help the situation along. We've both been practicing social distancing. Neither one of us has seen our parents. I mean, you know, we haven't. We see our co-workers, and that's pretty much it. You know, and even that's going to be coming to an end. We've heard down the pipeline,
Yep,
you know, that
absolutely.
it's coming to an end. There's going to be some changes coming up in the next couple of days, so we decided we better hurry up and, you know, do a couple of shows, get a couple of shows together, and then, you know, we'll have to take a pause for a little bit.
Well, you can even see here, we're actually doing our part right now, because if you remember the first show that we did, we were a little bit closer together
Yeah.
than what we are now.
Yeah.
We're practicing the social distancing. So
Like we've even arranged it so, you know, like Dell's getting dropped off here, and he comes in, and, you know, I come home after work, and I shower and I change my clothes, and I wash my hands, and I disinfect as much as I can. Everything in here has been cleaned down so that, you know, when we sit down, everything is nice and clean, and we're doing our best to, you know, to play it safe and be smart. So anyways,
we really just want to be able to have you guys be able to have an escape,
yeah,
you know, during this time, and that's it. So more or less during our conversation, we're not going to dwell on that at all,
Yeah.
because really and truly the whole idea of you watching this is to have an escape, which is why we
Oh,
had
yeah.
the little festive scene in that, and that
Oh, yeah.
wonderful hat and the glasses there. So that's what we want to do. But yeah, like more often than not, when we're going to be talking, you're going to hear stuff about music,
Oh, yeah.
and, you know, about cars and everything else. And that's the other thing too, like if you guys ever have any questions or whatever, because I know that when you see this on YouTube or even on the website or whatever, that obviously you have the opportunity to comment. And the only thing that I would ask is just to be respectful when you do so, because sometimes comment sections can be horrible.
Well, they're pretty good on the
they're pretty
Detailer
good.
Skills site. You
Yeah.
know what? I try and respect everybody. I go on there and I try and like as many videos that are put on there, and I try and respect everybody's posts. And I even comment, and when I comment, I make sure that I always put in a positive light, even if I'm giving criticism, because you know what? We're all there to support each other.
Yeah.
And that's the one cool thing. That's why this guild has actually lasted, more than a couple of weeks, because the thing is that the idea is everybody comes together and supports each other and raises everybody's spirits.
That's a good thing.
So that this podcast actually fits perfect into that slot. So,
And what I was going to say with that is, we're talking about music here now, and we'll have different topics to talk about. But what I was going to mention with the whole comment section is, considering that we read what you guys write, if there's ever a question that you guys want to ask, or whatever, then when we see that, we can actually incorporate some of that into a future show.
And we really do appreciate the comments that we do get.
And we appreciate the compliments and everything else.
Yeah.
And everybody who's watched the last episode, thanks for checking in.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people watching. I was pretty happy with that. So I was surprised, because we're not one of the things too with the Detailers Guild is we're not pumping a lot of money out there in advertising. Like, I respect Facebook and I respect YouTube, but the thing is, I want it to be just like my business, word of mouth.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you really like our show and you like what we're doing, share it with your friends. Tell your friends about it. I'd much rather have people watching the show that want to watch it, not because we're pumping out ads saying how great the show is, or like, we want it to be honest.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't like it, or you don't like what we're doing, let us know and we'll fix it up or change it up. But for the most part, we're getting a lot of positive feedback, and we're both really pleased with the way things are going. So,
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
And then you can throw it back at me if you want. But
No problem.
on the topic of music and the soundtrack of life.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I know that you mentioned as far as the Beach Boys and Bob Seger. Who would you say, or what genre of music, I should say, would you think would be something that brings back the greatest memory for you in terms of cars, even?
Probably. It's funny that it sounds, probably Pat Benatar, because at the time when I started working, this is back in the 80s when I started working on my own cars. I used to hear her a lot. She was on the radio a lot, so I would have on at the time it was WLLZ or
Yep.
WRIF. I would have on, and Pat Benatar was a favorite. I mean, the girl could sing. I mean, she was great. So I mean, we used to tune in, and we'd hear her come on, and she was so popular at the time, it's etched in my brain. So when I'm working on a car and I hear Pat Benatar come on, like, even if I'm playing a YouTube video and they got some classics playing, whenever I hear Pat Benatar, it takes me right back to my '67 Oldsmobile I was working on as a kid, and that was the first time I actually started working on cars. And I used to actually work on it with my buddy from Toronto. He used to come down for the summers, and we'd hang out and work on the car, and my brother would come out and help me, and we'd work on it. And the neighbors, at the time, the neighbors had a 10-year-old, and his name was Darren. We used to call him Little D, right? So Little D would hop the fence, or we'd lift him over the fence, because he was tiny at the time. So he'd come over, and we'd hang out, and we'd tear all kinds of stuff apart.
Yeah.
And he used to love just watching us, right? And the one time we tore this carburetor all apart, and the kids watching us, right? And we turned our backs and we're working on something else on the car. I think we were trying to get the intake off or whatever, because my brother and I were both learning at the time, and now my brother's gone on to do grander things in automotive.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're putzing underneath the hood, and this kid's back there putting the carburetor back together because he saw how we took it apart. And I was shocked, that a 10-year-old kid, the only thing he didn't do right was set the float, but that's because when you're taking a carburetor apart, you don't set the float. But he put the whole thing right back together again, and I was shocked, and my brother was a lot like that. My brother was very intuitive. Like when he took stuff apart, he knew how to put it back together. Like he was 4 years younger than me, so my brother used to watch. And one time I remember I was working in Mr. Renier's class, and my son actually has his son teaching him. So anyways, I took this rear end apart on this Trans Am that came in, and had a positive traction rear end. And in there, when you take it apart, there's this little clip that looks like a Z. So you take that little clip out, okay, and that's what locks everything together. And I was fighting with this thing for 10 minutes trying to figure out why it would go back in there. And my brother picks it up. He says, "Oh," he goes, "you got it in reverse." And he flipped it around, he put it right in. And I was stunned, because I was in my 4th year of automotive, and I'm thinking I'm the king, and I know all this stuff. And my brother, that's only putts with cars in the driveway with me and stuff like that, he was like, right away he knew what to do. And then later on down the road, when he wanted to take automotive, my dad wasn't very keen on it. So I helped, without getting too specific and throwing anybody under the bus. I gave my brother a little helping hand when it came time to signing for him to take his tech courses, because I saw, the light in his eyes when he was working on cars. I could just see, that was his passion, and it turned out, to be a godsend for him, because the kid's really good. I say kid, but he's old like I am. He's he's 46, but when you see somebody and you help them just a little bit, and they go a long way with it, it's one of the proudest moments you can have. And I get the same thing with my children too. My kids impress me all the time. I'm sure your son does too. I mean, you lead them in the right direction, and they just take it and run with it. That's one of the best feelings you can ever have. But yeah, I thought it was cool. But yeah, music does tie in a lot. Like even when I hear, if I hear Judas Priest, the one thing I think of is my brother and I playing basketball in my dad's driveway when we were kids. We used, like, at the time we used to do it to irritate the neighbor. We crank the tunes up and get out the ball and stuff, And looking back, we were a real pain in the butt. You know what I mean? We drove the poor lady nuts, and she's a nice lady. I mean, like, later on, we started calling her auntie and stuff like that, because, we got along good with her. And to this day, I still call her aunt.
So this woman's still alive?
Oh yeah, she's still alive. Same age as my parents. My parents are in their 70s. She's probably maybe a little younger than them, but pretty close. And my buddy's mom, she lived across the street, and we used to call her mom too. I mean, it was funny. Like, I noticed things have changed a lot now. Like when we were kids, everybody was auntie or mom, or we called our friends mom, and it's different. Like today, it's not like that. Like you don't really see that anymore. It's just a different generation here. And like whenever I hear different songs and stuff, it does bring me right back to to a time in my life when I was a kid or a teenager or a young man. Even Elvis, whenever I hear an Elvis song, I think of my wife, because that was our wedding song. We had an Elvis tune playing for our wedding, and it brings me right back to that day, and puts a smile on my face. And my kids always say, "Why do you like Elvis?" or "Why do you like Bob Seger? Why do you listen to that?" And he said, it's not even the music, it's the tie-in with my life. That's why I listen to it. You know, and when they get older, they'll realize it too, because there's stuff they're listening to now, and when they get older, and that, you know, they happen to hear that song, or they play that song, it's going to trigger a memory and bring them right back, and it's really cool, because music is such a huge part of our lives, and even at work. I mean, you know, I have a guy that works in the bay next to me, so I can even bring my own radio because he's playing the same stuff I grew up with. So I'm smiling all day long because I'm right back in, you know, I'm right back at Herman High School, you know, and you know, I'm right back in the '80s, you know, all day long. And it's kind of funny because you don't realize how important music is in your life until you know, a song comes on the radio or you hear it on YouTube or whatever. And it's cool how it brings you right back, puts a smile on your face, or puts a tear in your eye, or whatever. It's, you know, it's really neat. It's very moving. It's amazing how powerful music is.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah. So, anyways,
I think excuse me, I was gonna say, for me, I think that the genre of music that comes to mind for me, and I know for some people they might look at me and be like, "What are you talking about?" But it would be outlaw country. And it's funny because as a kid growing up, my Pepe used to. Well, he was an automotive guy. He really was into restoring cars, and a lot of times what he would do is he would get a couple of cars, buy them the Class 5s, whatever, and he'd take basically like two junker cars, strip them down to where they blah blah blah, and make one good car and sell it.
yeah.
And as a kid, my job was to go around and I would take all the trim off and that, and then I'd go around and I'd sand these cars.
But yeah, it was a different generation.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, I'm sure that somebody's out there watching this right now and they're thinking, well, what the heck does this have to do with cars? Well, I would say that part of this is that, like you mentioned at the beginning of the program, with everything that's going on in that, it's like, you know what, sometimes you just want to loosen up.
Oh yeah.
On that. And not only that, but it's kind of giving a feel of what our show is going to be about.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're going to be talking about detailing and whatnot, and you're going to give your expertise because you're the man there. But I also have a music background, which, by the way, and I have another story lined up after. But music's my thing. Yeah. So for me, I'm going to learn stuff from you about the automotive end. Maybe you might pick up a thing or two from me about music, you know, and then we can share the fact that we both enjoy the Gap Band.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
And you know, and that's the thing. So